Welcome back, and a very special welcome to our next guest, the great Rod Martin. We're going to have a usually free-range conversation with one of the great minds of our time. But before we do, I want to give you a little context for our topic A. President Trump has commendably understood and rejected efforts by champions of global governance like the World Health Organization to foist upon Americans international agreements that would crush our sovereignty and personal freedoms. To his great credit, Mr. Trump has given notice that the U.S. is withdrawing from the WHO, but it won't be effective until next January. In the meantime, the globalists are hoping he won't formally reject their bid to advance world government via a pact giving the organization's leader the right unilaterally to declare international public health emergencies and dictate what must be done about them. Think the World Health Organization's disastrous COVID-19 response on steroids. An international summit to encourage the rejection of such gambits will take place at 11 a.m. Eastern Time today. Register at antiglobalist.net and encourage President Trump at POTUS on X to reject the IHR amendments right away. Well, this is a little bit of context for the conversation I want to have with Rod Martin, the chairman of the board of our Institute for the American Future, the author of the Rod Martin Reports, and you can find those at rodmartin.org. He is also a, well, as I say, free-range mind, and we are always anxious to pick that mind about matters including this idea of world government. What are these globalists up to? What will it mean for all of us? Rod, it's great to have you back. Welcome.
It's good to be here.
So what do you make of that proposition? Maybe we could start with this business with the World Health Organization, because it's a prime example of what's afoot as we speak. If we don't get out of these amendments, explicitly reject them by Saturday of this week, they will become apparently binding on Americans, whether we're in the WHO or not. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, we must reject that. The new WHO treaty is just an abomination. And of course, it's driven entirely by China. The CCP has bought up the WHO as though it were a gas station on the corner. And that's been true since before the pandemic, which of course is in part a WHO production. So, this is horrible. This has to be stopped. But of course, the bigger issue here is, as you said, the push for global government, which is completely unrepresentative, completely unaccountable, and completely dominated by bureaucracies far away. And we actually have a word for that. It's called imperialism. That is the great scam of Marxism in general. Marxism was never revolutionary. They pretend to be the only revolutions, but in reality, Marxism is always just a transfer of sovereignty from one elite to another. And that is certainly the case here, except in the case of the United States, it would be transfer of sovereignty from a free people to a foreign elite, and not a foreign elite that we have a lot of say over. So look, international organizations can have utility. Heck, the Holy Alliance had utility after the Congress of Vienna. There are times and places for us to be involved in things. NATO is proving to be a little more useful again. That's good. There are all these different things that we can do that make sense within national interest. But the truth is that nationalism is a word that was demonized by the left, primarily Stalin, because of political battles 100 years ago. And the American left ran with it because they were in love with Joe Stalin, and they were in love with global governance. And those things have permeated our vocabulary, but must not cloud our thinking. The truth is, nationalism is the right of a discrete group of people to rule itself as it chooses according to its own cultural norms and its own desires. And that is how you got an American Revolution. That's also how you got an independent Kenya, an independent India, an independent Hungary, or Poland, for that matter. It's a good. It is not an unmitigated good. There are certainly aspects of it that can get out of hand. But that's just because, again, the communists have tried to redefine it. We need nation states, we need free peoples, and we don't need a globalist foreign elite dictating to our people.
Yeah. Well, that was absolutely brilliantly said, Rod, what we come to expect from you. But let me just ask you to tease out one piece of that you kind of alluded to in passing. Imperialism. We are endlessly being told now, of course, that colonialism, or imperialism by another name, is one of the great banes of mankind, and that it must be resisted at every turn. And yet that's precisely what the left is promoting. You're absolutely right. And the ultimate imperialism would be this idea of transnational governance by elites that are unelected and unaccountable, as you say, would it not?
Well, and ironically, they would deny that there's any imperialism in it because it's not one nation imposing its will on others. Well, that's actually a tacit nod to nationalism. The truth is, Hitler wasn't a nationalist. He was an imperialist. He believed in Germany dominating everybody. The Russians pretended, this internationalism all during the Cold War, but in reality were creating and did create an empire. These things can't be avoided. And what would be the ultimate empire? How about an aristocracy in Brussels or Geneva or wherever that gets to dictate to you and has no national affiliation at all? This is straight out of a science fiction movie or a dystopian novel. It's just the worst, and it must be resisted.
Well, we have an opportunity to do just that. And as I said, there are reports that President Trump is going to reject these amendments. We strongly encourage people to get in touch with the White House, get in touch with POTUS, at POTUS on X. Support this rejection, this, effectively repudiation of this globalist agenda. Do it today, because this has to be done by the 19th of the month, Saturday, or else the globalists will get their claws into us through these amendments to the international health regulations. Rod Martin is going to stay with us. We'll be right back with much more about, among other things, space, the high frontier, right after this. Welcome back. We are continuing what is one of my favorite segments of the program each week, and that is our visit with the great Rod Martin. He is a man of many parts, one of the original members of the so-called PayPal Mafia. He's gone on to myriad entrepreneurial and intellectual pursuits and ventures. He's been a prominent leader of the Southern Baptist Convention, among other things, and he is our leader at the Institute for the American Future, which, among other things, makes this program possible, for which we are profoundly grateful. Rod, I wanted to turn from matters terrestrial to matters galactic. It turns out, within hours of our discussion today, that Elon Musk, I believe an old colleague of yours, plopped a couple of astronauts into the Pacific Ocean on schedule, as expected, as desired. Further evidence that he's really got something going in terms of space activities, exploration, as well as possible population. It turns out, though, that the Chinese Communist Party has another plan for the galaxy, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about imperialism. They have in mind, declaring it all basically theirs, starting with the moon. What do you think might happen if they get back there before we do?
Well, to be clear,
there in our case, for the first time to their their case?
Sure. I mean, they intend to annex the moon. They've been very clear about that. And that may sound crazy to some of your listeners, but it shouldn't. Have you heard of the Spratly Islands? I mean, this is how they play. And once they annex something, they exclude everybody else from it, and they militarize it to keep you away. So that is entirely their intent. And you say, well, that violates the Outer Space Treaty. Well, yeah, so what? I mean, what treaty will China not violate? Come on. So yes, they're playing for keeps. They're just way behind. And you mentioned, Elon really has something going. I'll tell you what he has going. For the last 3 straight years, he's launched 85% of everything that went to space for the entire planet Earth. I mean, it's just an insuperable lead. He is the only manned spaceflight option available to the United States at this time. And Starship is transformative. Starship goes so far beyond anything that we've experienced with space travel up to now that it really does feel a little bit like Star Trek or The Expanse.
So just tease that out again. When you talk about us having an insuperable lead thanks to Elon Musk, my understanding, Rod, is that his principal, if not more or less exclusive focus, is skipping the moon and just going straight to Mars, which he would like to see colonized by us. The Chinese are making a concerted effort. They may be pikers by comparison with him, but they're making a very concerted effort to not only build out their space station, but also move on through what's known as cislunar space between the Earth and the Moon to get to the south pole of the Moon. And there's believed to be water there, which could make a lot of things possible. And yes, annex and certainly militarize it to keep everybody else like us off of it. Is that an unreasonable expectation on their part, do you think?
I don't think anything the Chinese are trying to do is unreasonable from a technological perspective, and it certainly fits their ideology. As far as Elon, you may know that Elon has a contract, SpaceX has a contract with NASA to provide the human landing system for NASA's return to the moon, which was just even more fully funded in the big beautiful bill. So he's definitely creating a lunar lander, and the moon makes a lot of sense as a way station. It makes a lot of sense for mining and manufacturing. What makes more sense is near-Earth asteroids, of which there are just countless. We literally don't know how many are nearby, and some of them are worth billions, if not trillions of dollars in resources. So all of that's going to get attention.
Resources meaning if you can get on them and mine them, there's all kinds of rare earth minerals or rare non-earth minerals, I guess one would call them in that case, right?
Everything that's here and stuff that isn't. So for instance, on the moon, there is a tremendous quantity of something called helium-3, which is very, very rare on Earth. Not in quantities on Earth that are usable, but on the moon, it's plentiful. That could be the key to low-cost, widespread fusion energy and just transform the entire future of civilization.
Assuming that you can get it there and bring it back here, I take it. Is that the plan?
Well, that would be the plan, but that's not, of course, all of it. Because if you're going to do all those things I just said, you're going to need a lot of power in space. And you mentioned water at the south pole of the moon. Well, there's enough water on Mars, it turns out, to cover the planet. It's just frozen and under the surface like the lunar water. So you're going to need power to separate that out into oxygen and hydrogen. You're going to need power to pump it and purify it so people can drink it. You're going to need to turn it into rocket fuel. And so, low cost fusion combined with solar is going to power a solar system wide civilization.
This is the kind of big thinking that we've come to expect from you, Rod. And in terms of the state of fusion, assuming you've got helium-3 to make it feasible or at least commercially viable. How far out is that at this point, would you say?
Well, it's always just 30 years away, isn't it? However,
seems to be.
And by the way, I'm not suggesting that you have to have helium-3 to make it work. It ought to make it work a lot better. But we're actually making tremendous progress. And where you know that it's actually becoming real is this: when billionaires start investing in it as a business. And that has been the case now for the last 10 years. Guys like Bill Gates and Peter Thiel and others have actually pumped a lot of money into fusion as a real business, which means they think it's close, and that means it probably is.
We will be monitoring this closely with your help, my friend. Rod Martin, thank you. The author of Rod Martin Reports. Find him at rodmartin.org. We're always delighted to have you. Find him here, too. Come back for more next time, if you would. Until then, go forth and multiply.